Alrighty, so what's going on? Welcome back to Personal Best Outdoors. Hey, thank you guys for tuning in. This is going to be another kind of a cool video. By the time that I start releasing this video series, the information will already be out there. So I got invited to do basically a once-in-a-lifetime hunt for me. Basically what I'm going to be doing is I get to go hang out with Troy, aka the Ranch Fairy, and a few people from the Ashby Bow Hunting Foundation, and I get to shoot some exotics in Texas, which is going to be fantastic. I have planned to shoot a water buffalo, which will be like the largest animal I've ever shot. Probably won't ever get an opportunity to shoot one again, and I'm also hoping that this year I'll get to shoot a red stag, either that or a fallow deer. Just some cool stuff to put on the wall that I've never had an opportunity to shoot before. But basically what I'm doing is I just recently found out, so this hunt takes place in 2 weeks from today. I will be on the airplane flying down there. I found out after talk with Rob Nielsen, who's the president of the Ashby Bow Hunting Foundation, that yes, a 657 grain arrow is doable on a water buffalo under Plan A circumstances. You know, these are wild animals and they're dangerous, considered dangerous game. Of course, obviously, you know, Cape buffalo is much more dangerous, but these things are big, you know, between like 1,200 plus pounds for a nice mature bull, which is ultimately what I'm going to be after. I want to make sure that I'm shooting this thing ethically and I'm putting it down as quick as possible, because I don't want to be charged by one of these things and I don't want my double basically to put down this animal. I want to be the one to kill it. So I have basically 2 weeks as of today to build a much arrow with much more mass. It's going to be another, you know, technically 11 factor arrow build, just because, you know, I'm not going to use tapered shafts. The reason I'm building this arrow is I'm going to be building it from a Monster Safari, which is an 86-pound bow. My draw length is 28 inches. So because I'm planning on putting like 600-700 grains worth of point weight on the front, means I need to have a very, very stiff spine. And so I was able to talk to Seth, who basically owns Serious Archery, put together an order. He expedited it here to me, so I want to give a major shout out to Serious Archery. These guys are awesome. Even with yesterday, or not yesterday, but Monday being Martin Luther King Day and Inauguration Day. So hell yeah, welcome back, United States of America. We got Trump again for another 4 years, so hopefully things will be fantastic. But he was able to get my order rushed out to me. It left there yesterday, got all the way here to Washington State just a few minutes ago. So I'm gonna start building these arrows, show you guys what we're doing, part of that whole process, because you guys have seen before, and if you haven't checked out those videos, I'll put a card like up here for the building of the 11 factor arrows. I'm not going to go into as much detail with the steps, but I'm going to take you along with me while I build this arrow, basically ultimately shooting for a minimum of 950 grains, but because we're going to kind of walk the length of the spine down, or the length of the arrow down, yeah, I'd like to be closer to like 1,000, maybe even 1,100 pounds, just because it would be so awesome to shoot that out of an 86-pound bow. But whatever the arrow winds up being at, as long as we get perfect arrow flight, that's what we're going to shoot. So I'm going to take you along with me. I'm probably a little bit crazy for trying to film this, and I'm crunched for time, but I'm pretty sure I can get it all done. So get you set up, and we'll start showing you step one, which is checking the spine. I ordered 9 of these carbon shafts. They're 150 spine. I'm expecting that I'm going to find all different variations in there, just because you do with any arrow manufacturer. Serious Archery does a great job at trying to batch those things, but I've seen with other brands who I'll keep nameless, you know, if you buy like a pack of 12 shafts that are like 250 spine, I've seen them as light as like, you know, or as stiff as basically like a, you know, a 233. I've seen them as weak as like basically a 269, so you get kind of a big spread there. The biggest spread so far that I've seen is about 20, actually that's inaccurate, it's 19 integers. So I think on this last order of 250 spines that I ordered from Sirius, the stiffest one that I got, I believe, was a 238, and the weakest one that I got was like a 256 or something like that. I'll go double check them. But so we're going to check spine, make sure that we're getting them batched, because ultimately I'm planning, if I can get away with 3 just perfect hunting arrows out of this, I'll be happy. I'm only going to be using this bow to shoot a water buffalo. I'll be bringing my VXR along, with my traditional 657 grain arrow, 11 factor arrow for shooting the red stag, the fallow deer, and all the hogs that we'll get opportunities at. So let me get you guys set up. We'll start this process. Let's get it going. All right, so as I said, basically we just load a piece of carbon in here. This thing just lifts up. You can slide your carbon in there. You get this drop back down and you want to zero it out. This thing's kind of finicky with zeroing. Fortunately, I got it right the first time. Now we're going to take this weight and we're going to set it on there. And basically, you got to give it kind of a couple taps to just kind of let it settle in, like real light taps. And it'll give you like a real accurate reading. So, I mean, we're right there at like 1725. So, that's basically 173 spine arrow. So, we'll take this off. I'll usually rotate it like 90 degrees just to make sure that I'm not like right on the seam. And we'll drop this back on here. Oops, I just bumped the dial indicator. That's how sensitive this thing is. Give her a couple taps. So yeah, like 170 spine is what I would call that. So I'm going to do that for the rest of these 9 shafts. I'm going to write them down on here. I'm not going to record all of that just to save you guys some of like the watchmaking aspect. But we'll write all the spine down on each of these. That way we have the correct spine that this actually measures out to, and we're going to batch them. So I'll be back with you when that part's completed. Alright, so I got these handled. I'm actually really impressed. So these are all between 167 all the way up to 173. So they're supposed to be 150 spine. Honestly, it doesn't really matter because I think 150 probably would have been a little bit stiff. I appreciate that the spread on these is so narrow. So we got 9 shafts here, and we're talking a spread of 6 points. Really isn't super bad. It would be a little... I would prefer for them all to be 150 spine, but it could be like a calibration issue with my dial indicator that's on there. I honestly don't really know, but the spread is ultimately what I'm most interested in. So if these are truly like around 170, obviously the carbon would just overall be a little bit shorter, which is only going to help increase my FOC a little bit more to kind of get that right dynamic spine. But what we're going to do now is we're going to spin each of these, and I want to get like the straightest, truest carbon shaft that I can out of here. So I'm going to mark like the wobbliest end. Probably going to end up trimming about 2 inches off because I know I'm not going to shoot a 32-inch length carbon. I would imagine I'm probably going to be somewhere in the ballpark of like 27-inch carbon when everything is said and done. But of course, we're just going to build one of these guys, put the inserts in there. These are all pretty close as far as batching is concerned. So I mean, it looks like I've got couple 167s, a 169, a 170. A 170, a 171, and a 171. So I could probably count on getting like these 5 shafts here in the middle are probably going to be my hunting shafts, just because there's only like 2 integer spread difference there. So I'll take one of these, spin them, probably show you guys that just to kind of recap. Find the wobbliest end, try to cut off from that length, but we're going to start with around 30-inch length carbon before we start doing like the carbon length tuning on the bow by shooting it through the compound as a bare shaft. So let's get that going. Alright, so you span one arrow, you spun them all, but we're basically just going to set them on here, and I'm looking for any wobble on this end. So that one spins like glass, so that's good. We'll flip it and we'll see if the other end has any wobble to it. There's just ever so slightly, just the smallest amount of wobble there. So I'm going to mark this end for cut. And we'll set it aside. And we'll do the next one. That one's got a small amount of wobble to it. That one's got a little wobble too, so we'll probably take an inch off both sides on that one. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one of these guys. These 3 were all really straight. I'll just have 2 of them right here right now. But cut it down to 30 inches, install components on the front end, and then basically I just realized I don't have any nocks that fit these because these are not a micro diameter. I could use the stock nocks, but the problem is I plan on using a lighted knock, so if we put weight on the back later, it means it's going to stiffen the overall dynamic spine of the arrow. So I'm going to be kind of at a stopping point for today. I did order the Halo lighted nocks in 204, so they'll be able to be here within a few days because SVA is just on the other side of the state. Podium Archer, so they're usually pretty good at getting things to me pretty quick. So I'll order them. It'll give it time for these components and stuff to set up in the front end of these guys, and then we'll start testing probably this weekend, try to figure out that perfect carbon length, and then build some cookie cutter arrows. So we'll see you then. Alright, so I've got this set up to take 1 inch off because we have this shaft where little's coming off on both ends. When I fire this up, you won't be able to hear anything because it's noisy as hell, but basically when we cut these, we're not just going to freaking shove it through there. We're going to kind of slowly rotate and let the the wheel there do its work. So let's go ahead and do that. So we've taken 1 inch off of this guy. All of my cuts now are going to be at this end, so we're going to bump this in another inch. When I put the tape on here, I was a little bit off by like a 1/16 of an inch, so that's actually 30 inches, even though it looks like it's a little bit beyond it. So now we're going to turn all these over because we're going to cut this end with the marks on them, right? So, wait. Oh, okay, you can see them. So we're going to cut this end where the marks are at. So let's go ahead and cut the rest of them. Alright, there we go. We've got 5 shafts cut to 30-inch length. This one I'm going to set aside just because we trimmed a little off both ends. I'm going to check the spin on all these, but this one will be the one that I make a decision on towards the end of things. Find out if we're even going to use it, because it could end up being like not true, in which point with putting a large fixed blade broadhead on there, I probably wouldn't want to shoot it. So get this stuff brought inside and I'll show you the next step. Alright, so all I've done, if you can see, is I painted the ends of these with silver Sharpie, because when we go to square them, we want to make sure once all that silver Sharpie is gone, basically it means that it's square. Now, interest of fair disclosure, if you guys kind of rotate your carbon into the cutting wheel like I was doing, this squaring process usually goes a lot quicker. Normally if you just kind of yarp it in there, you'll get kind of an angled cut. It's just enough that it requires you to spend more time squaring, so definitely take your time cutting because it will save you more time in the long run. But we'll go ahead and grab one of these, and I'll flip this camera around. Okay, and basically this thing just lines up in here, and we'll give her some spins. Normally, yep, so just them few little quick spins, you can see all that silver Sharpie is gone. If I can get this to focus, there we go. So it's completely gone. And if you'll notice, like, these sandpapers are super old. You see all that carbon that's on there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all these squared up. I'll get back with you guys when it's done. Alright, so basically, got them all squared off. We're going to take, don't tell my wife I'm using her acetone. I didn't want to go get my big ass thing out of the shop. But we're basically just going to take and we're going to put a little down both ends of these guys here. Because we want these to be clean, right? You can see it's already pulling some of that out. And then we'll use the dry end. And you'll get the last little bit of it out of there. So, anyway, we're going to start here with 30-inch length. Get you guys set up. I'll install components on one of these. We're going to need to spin it. Make sure that it's spinning perfect. And I'm going to want to index my broadhead with it that I'll be using, which are going to be these guys. 400 grain, dangerous game heads from Tough Head. They are screw in. Unfortunately, they don't make the glue-on ones anymore, so I'm just going to JB weld them when I actually transition them over to broadheads for hunting. JB weld them in there so they can't fail. But we need to find out the spine of the arrow, so I'll show you my trick. Just shine a flashlight down through the inside of the carbon. You'll see a seam. Mark that. That's your spine. So we'll go ahead and get you set up for that. So stay tuned. Alright, so I'm hoping I'll be able to show you guys this. I had a hard time doing this before, mostly because the camera doesn't want to focus. But if you look down into the carbon in here, so if I shine this flashlight and we slowly kind of rotate, you see it right there towards the left? That line that's there? Oh, focus, come on. You see that line that works down the length of the carbon? That's your spine. So basically what they've done there is that's where they've rolled the carbon, right? Kind of down there on the lower left. I'm trying to orient this, right? It's super confusing me right now. But to try to get you guys to be able to see, there you go. So that line there, that's the spine. That's where the carbon was met together when it went from a flat sheet and rolled together. That's going to be your stiffest spot of your arrow. So we're going to go ahead and mark the back side of the arrow. So it'll be... I can't see it anymore, but basically what I'll do is I'll just make a mark on it, and if I remember right, it's going to be right about there. Yep, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and mark all of these, both sides, and we'll get a component installed. Alright, so something I like to do is I like to segregate items by weight. I like to take, like for example, all of your carbon is not going to be the exact same weight. I like to get things as close as possible, so we're just going to set this up, and I need it to be grains GN. So this guy here, this carbon is going to be, oops, it's on the table, we can't have that. So 395.8. So I'm going to go through, weigh all these out, and get them segregated, and then we're going to do the same thing with the broadheads. So I'm going to get this all weighed out and get back with you. Alright, so I got the carbon all weighed out. Let's see what these broadheads weigh. They're supposed to be 400 grains, but it's going to be plus or minus a few grains. So this one's 396.9. Oh, 397.1. Sometimes it takes the scale a second to update. So 397.1. 398.2. So I'm gonna go through, weigh all these, and I'll get back with you. Alright, so I got these here dangerous game field points. They're 400 grains. Obviously we're gonna weigh these too, because I want to get one. They come in a pack of 12, but I want to get one you can just see the size of these things. These things are frickin' monstrous. But we want to get one of these that's going to match you know, these broadheads and stuff as close as possible. So we'll go ahead and set this guy on there and get it turned on. Alright. 401.2, so that one's heavier than any of the broadheads that I have. .401.1, still heavier. Alright, so these are supposed to be 250 grains together, so obviously we have an insert and an outsert. I'm going to weigh them individually, but you can also cut these off, you know, depending upon what your total arrow weight is that you're going to want to be. Just doing some quick math, I mean, if this is 250 grains plus 399.7 grains, we'll just call that 400 grains. We're at 650 grains. And then my carbon, so 397 grains. So I mean, call it 400. That's 1,050 grains. Of course, we're going to be cutting the carbon down, so just to make things easier, I'm not going to be cutting anything off of these because my arrow is going to get progressively lighter as I'm cutting that back, and I want to be at least like 950 grains. If I end up being more than that, great, but the nocks that I'm going to end up using, they're like 14 grains, so it'll kind of help get some weight back, and then obviously veins, so plus your JB weld adds a little weight too. So let's go ahead and get a weight on these. So it looks like the collar here is going to be 90.3. I think they're supposed to be around 90 grains or whatever. Yep, that one's 90.1. So I'll get all 9 of these weighed out and get back with you guys. Alright, so I've got all my components weighed out. You might be able to see my little weights on them. So that's 160 even, 160.2, so on and so forth, all the way up to 160.8. And then we've got 90, 90.1, all the way up to 90.5. And then my broadheads here, the lightest one's 396.5, and the heaviest one is 399.2. So the carbon, I went ahead and spun them all after I got them all weighed out and everything. And this is the one I like as far as being the truest, so it weighs 396.8. My lightest carbon is this guy here, 395.6. So this one that we're going to be using is a grain heavier, and it's also exactly a grain lighter than my heaviest one at 397.8. So we're kind of right in the middle of the road, which means we're going to kind of pick a right in the middle of the road setup here. So we're probably going to go with this 160.2, because I have a lot of those. We'll go slightly heavier than right in the middle of the road, so we'll probably do like 90.4 here. And we'll probably end up rocking with, you know, probably one of these guys for broadheads here, but we're going to use one of these field points for shooting, but for this purpose of spinning, okay, because we want to make sure that our broadhead, when we put it on there, is going to spin true. We're going to spin it with this guy, which is going to be the broadhead that we use. So these are going to be our components going on this shaft. Let's get you guys set up to make that happen. I'm going to get this stuff put away and clear out the space here, and we'll show you what's next. Alright, time to install some components. So I like using foil because this JB weld, and for example, I don't use the quick stuff. This is 4 to 6 hour cure. The quick stuff, I don't know, sometimes it just sets up too quick while you're trying to finagle things, and then you have a bunch of product that ends up getting wasted on the foil. This stuff isn't really super expensive, but it just gets to be kind of a pain in the ass to, you know, have to continually put out more product, mix it up again, you know, every other arrow. Plus this stuff I think actually bonds substantially better than the quick setting stuff does. But we're just going to mix this stuff up. I like using tin foil because the stuff will heat up a little bit, as I started saying, and this kind of helps to insulate the heat. Just something I've always done, plus it's a nice smooth surface. I've used like plastic bags before, and they kind of like get stuck to it and they lift up and they crinkle and stuff. But when you've got this mixed up, you're pretty much good to go. Now keep in mind, we want to index our broadheads to be with this line here where the spine is, and we got lucky here. It's not uncommon, so I'll show you. It's not uncommon if we point this one kind of straight up and we just kind of rock this back. This one's also straight up, so it means our spine is going perfectly straight down that arrow. It's not uncommon for him to be twisted, so you'll notice like the back end of one is kind of one way, whereas the one in front is straight up. That's okay. It's going to happen. I just like to index them all the same. So this is cool that it worked out, and we don't really care. Like, so for example, we're going to be cutting off the back end of this carbon. You could shoot this as the front end where the label is, doesn't matter. I don't end up caring if I end up cutting the label off. Honestly, if you care about where your label is indexed on your arrows, you kind of are leaving a lot of room for like growth and opportunity to have better shooting arrows on the table. But hey, you do you. So basically, these things are pretty straightforward. All we're really going to do, we're going to take this guy. I'm going to put some of this goodness on here. And I like kind of going in the grooves. I want to see if I can get you guys set up so I can show you here, while I can also see what I'm doing too. But I kind of like to get some in the grooves here. Like skip every other one. You're going to have so much oozing out of there that you're going to have to end up cleaning it up anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But these grooves kind of, like, JB Weld does a good job anyway as it is of just kind of keeping things in place, but those grooves will kind of do a good job at just kind of locking it in there. And then I need to grab a paper towel. This part always gets a little bit messy. But what we're going to do now, I want to make sure, here, let me just turn the camera around here so I can show you my maneuver here. That way I can see what I'm doing. But we're going to put this in here, and I like to hold where the insert's up and just kind of twist it while letting kind of gravity take over. And then once I get it about halfway, turn it upside down, right? And just keep kind of doing the same thing, because that ring, that donut, if you will, of material that you get built up, it'll start running down your carbon if you hold it the other way. And we want this to be nice and uniform around there. So yeah, because we want it to be all kind of liberally applied on all 360 degrees of this. So definitely take your time here. It's worth doing. And then right when we get right about to the end here, let's go ahead and tap it down on some paper towel. Try not to get it in the threads. I mean, we will be doing that later. I'm gonna JB weld these broadheads on there so they can't come off like I would do if they were like a direct bond tough head. But because we're going to be shooting these as field points, we don't quite want to do that yet. So we want to make sure this is nice and just forced down on there. We're going to set this aside for now because we're going to be putting these guys on there. So these don't thread on. Some of your other aero manufacturers, they will, like Black Eagle does it with their Focus system, FOCOS, but this will slide on. Then there's a little set screw you put in there. That set screw always comes undone on me. So I generally just like to bond them up myself. But we're going to, again, turn this camera around. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. And on the end of the arrow where we put our component into, okay, I'm going to put some of that on there. Okay, you guys can see what I'm doing. So these components, that the insert piece is a little bit thinner in diameter than the outer wall of the carbon is. So to just make sure that we're getting a nice, good, solid bond on there. And be careful not to get it on the threads of the component itself, but I'm also going to put some on like the steel part here. And we'll work this down there a little bit. Okay, and then we'll turn the camera around. And same thing, just going to take this insert, or this outsert, and we're going to kind of slowly spin. Let it kind of center itself with the JB weld, which it will, as long as you're going nice and slow with it, and you just keep spinning it. You could spin it 1,000 times and only move like 1/4 of an inch. It's only going to work better because it's kind of allowing that to spread throughout the inside of that even better. What you don't want to have is voids in there where you don't have JB weld, because as the stuff cures, it is going to kind of expand and it'll cause that to move a little bit. So this is kind of important. And then I just take the edge of a paper towel, right, and run it right up against that component. It's alright if you kind of slide the component up a little bit just to kind of clean that off, because we can just take it and push it right back down. So now this is where it's going to get difficult for me to show you what I'm after. But basically I have this kind of mapped out. We're going to eventually spin this on here to make sure that these broadheads spin super true, but what we're going to do right now, we're going to thread our broadhead in here. And you won't be able to get it like super tight or anything, just because of the fact that like this stuff in here is still wet. But you see where this line is right here? We want to index our broadhead so when we look down at like this, at the broadhead, so this line is exactly at the 12 o'clock position. So we're going to want to index our broadhead to line up perfectly with that line. So exactly like that. Okay. Now if I look down the back of my arrow, so I guess my spine is still a little twisted because right now my back mark shows that broadhead being perfectly, I mean, it shows this back mark back here being right at 12, so it looks like my broadhead's like pointing at like 1030, even though it is oriented perfectly with that line there. So that's fine. Just keep in mind they're gonna kind of tighten down a little bit more. So I probably would take it back to maybe like the 1 o'clock position. Sight it. That looks pretty good, because when this actually dries up completely, you'll be able to get like another like 1/8 of a turn out of that. And so now make sure that we're spinning good. So that's actually really, really, really good. It's close. It's not perfect. So I've got some wobble there. And it looks like, okay, so my high side is right here on this head that's up. So I'll just grab this here and kind of bend just a little bit. Kind of shove that epoxy JB Weld in there around. That's better. And that's really, really close. There's just a little bit of a dip right there. So my low side, basically my high side is down right now. So same thing. We're just going to kind of push and flex a little bit. I may have gone just a little too far there. Man, that is so close. It looks like I've got a little bit of a high side there. Kind of bend it a little bit, work some of that epoxy around. And that right there is money. That is perfect. So when you're here and you've gotten it to this point, you're done. You're done. That's where you stop. Okay? So we're going to set this up and let this cure 4 to 6 hours. And then we'll be able to basically, once the knocks get here, shoot this with a field point on here, this guy, and make sure we're getting perfect arrow flight. When we finally figure out what that length of that carbon is, we will turn all of those into exactly that. So I'll get at you guys in a couple days when I get some knocks. All right, well, here we go, like 6 yards away. Got the Monster Safari with the field point on there, bare shaft. Gonna go ahead and shoot this. I'll show you guys what we're looking for, so hang tight. All right, so I just took my shot. Set the bow down. So I'm perfectly square with the target right now, and you can probably pick this up, right? So I'm tail left, which means my spine's just a little weak. It's not really that bad. I was expecting it to be like more, honestly. So I'm glad I was tempted to just cut this carbon down to like 29 inches, and I think that would have been too short. So we're gonna take this out, pull the knock off, probably knock about, I would say like 1/8 of an inch off, because we're not really super far. I'd say I probably through paper, this would be maybe like 1.5 inches tail left tear. So, I mean, you can kind of see it from here. I'm square with the target. I'm holding my phone square with the target. So we'll probably take 1/8 of an inch off, see how much that changes. It may not change a whole lot. Like I described to you guys before, so this, right, you'll think that like it's going to be this massive radical improvement, and there are periods where it is. So you'll start with a pretty big tear, and you'll start knocking a little bit off at a time, and you're not really going to notice that tail left tear change a lot. But don't get in a rush and cut more off, because the problem that happens is you'll get like these real small incremental improvements, and then you'll cut that same 1/4 or 1/8 or whatever it is that you've been doing off, and suddenly it'll change a lot, right? So it's important to just take it slow. I promise it's worth the time to do it right, and make sure that we're doing it correctly. So we'll go ahead and go back there. I you guys have seen these videos before, I'll tag it here again or whatever. That way you can watch this process. I'm not going to film this because I'm trying to get this done, but just take a little bit of carbon length off and repeat. So I stopped midway in my cut here to show you how small of an amount I'm taking off there. Like literally the width of the blade itself. And watch how much of an improvement this will make. We may have to do maybe one more of these, then we'll check it again at 30. Alright, so transparency, I don't feel like I executed the best shot there. So we're going to repeat this one, regardless of what it shows, but so it did show it cleaning up a little bit, but I am going to repeat that. And you need to be honest with yourself, and honestly, a good thing to do, take these cuts, shoot it 2-3 times. I do. Kind of important because you might do something a little bit different and it'll give you like that perfect, you know, tear through paper or perfect orientation into the target. You're like, great, I nailed it. Then you spend all the time fletching all these things up, cut all these arrows, and you're noticing after doing all of that they're just not flying super great. It's worth it to take the extra step. So I'm gonna shoot it probably a couple more times and make my decision from there. All right, see what we got. I'm already liking it. You guys probably can't pick it up yet, but oh yeah, that's what we're looking for right there. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that a couple times just to make sure and show you the next step involved here. All right, so after repeating it a few times, pretty happy with it. So what we do is we back it up to 30, and I like to see just a slightly weak spine read on there. You know, like maybe if you're shooting at paper from 30 yards, you'd have, you know, like a 1/2 inch or something like that tear. Because when we fletch them up and put our frickin', yeah, that's perfect, lighted knock on there, it's going to be super cleaned up because it'll kind of strengthen the spine up a little bit. But so it's just ever so slightly tail left. So that would be for straight on, just about like that, right? So that's exactly what we're looking for. Now at this point, you've got your recipe for your arrows. So you'd want to cut them all to this length. Obviously fletch them up, build them, which is what I'm going to do now. We'll get a broadhead screwed on this guy after I fletch it up and just shoot it and make sure that we like everything, because ultimately these are going to be for hunting, they're not for target. So what I care about most is how they fly with a broadhead on them. So go ahead and get that process going. It's getting kind of late in the evening right now, so probably gonna be done for today, but I'll get back at you guys tomorrow. Boy howdy, welcome back. It is a brand new day here. Welcome back to Personal Best Outdoors. Today, so we went ahead and got the arrow built. Full disclosure, this is not my final arrow build. I will eventually have a lighted knock and a wrap on the back of this, which is going to increase the weight a little bit, probably by around 12 grains or so. But right now the current arrow weight of this build is 1061.6 grains. Be shooting it out of an 86-pound Mathews Monster Safari 28-inch draw. We're gonna see, because I've got this guy set up right here, lab radar. We're gonna get it targets down there, all the way down there, and be doing is we're gonna find out just how quick this arrow is, or in this case how slow it is. Velocity doesn't really matter. Basically the reason I'm trying to get quantify this is basically to figure out what my momentum of this arrow is, because it's going to be for a water buffalo. And so yeah, I'm going to get everything set up and we'll get back with you guys. But we'll go ahead and get this thing flying and figure out just how quick or slow it is actually moving. So stay tuned. All right, so I think I figured out a way to make this work, because I'm filming by myself as is customary. You guys should be able to see me. I'll get this thing set up. We'll take a shot. Hopefully I've got that lab radar set up just right where it'll be able to follow the arc of the arrow, and we'll see what we get. Okay. my launch and read the 60. So let's see what we get. We got a reading out to 40, so we'll have to adjust this just a little bit. All right, cool. We got out to 60 on that one. Let me show you. So that worked out pretty good. This thing's a little finicky to get it set up to where it'll read just right. But that time we got a launch of 207, at 204 at 20, 201 at 40, 200 at 60. So that's pretty good. We'll check it again, see what we got. All right, so 2 more shots. Shot felt pretty good, broke clean. Okay, we've got readings up to 60. Show you guys. So 208 at launch, 204 at 20, 201 at 40, 199 at 60. So one more and then we'll run some averages. All right, well, what's going on? I'm sitting down, I'm editing up this video, and it dawned on me that I never filmed me actually computing the slug feet, or slug feet a second, basically, which is the factor that you should be interested in more than anything else in a hunting scenario. So there's a big difference between momentum and kinetic energy. And kinetic energy shows a much bigger number, all that kind of stuff. It looks way sexier on paper. And so kinetic energy is basically what all of these bow manufacturers focus on. Okay. And it's unfortunately, it's gotten the industry completely turned upside down because momentum for a hunting setup is what you want. What momentum is an object's basically ability to maintain its movement, right? So if you have a much lower momentum, it's going to be way quicker to slow it down versus something with a much higher momentum. So even thinking about things that are similar in shape, okay, which is going to be volume or surface area that the environment can act on. So average is 14 psi, pounds per square inch, of any projectile moving through the air. That's the weight that's being acted on it to slow it down. Okay, that's just the average. Being higher above sea level is going to decrease that. Being lower, towards sea level is going to make that a little bit higher. But let's just focus on that for an average. Okay, if you take a golf ball and you throw that golf ball, just call it basically 40 miles an hour. Okay, that golf ball is going to maintain that velocity longer before being able to slow down because it has more mass than a ping pong ball. Take a ping pong ball, throw it at 80 miles an hour. Which one of those two objects is going to go further? On top of that, if you want to think about it in a hunting type scenario, which one of those two is more likely to break a pane of glass? So you set up a pane of glass up against your fence, stand 3 feet from it, and throw a ping pong ball as fast and as hard as you possibly can. Launch it through a frickin' slingshot. Do whatever it is you got to do. Take a golf ball and, basically, just give it a little bit of momentum with trying to throw it. You don't have to do anything crazy. It's going to crack and break that glass, right? That's what momentum is. And we'd seen that with the lab radar. So I know from personal experience when messing with the lab radar, using lighter arrows, that's another video I need to put together, but using lighter arrows as a 417 grain arrow being shot out of that same bow, the Monster Safari, the slug feet a second was represented as like 0.67 slug feet a second. That arrow was moving, I want to say, I'll have to look this up and I'm going to make a video on this. There's a lot of information that needs to be put together for that to make sense, but that arrow was moving somewhere in the realm of like 320 feet per second. So what I've done is I went ahead and just averaged that out. So a lot of these guys that are shooting like, a 400 grain arrow with long draws, shooting 75, 80 pound bows, they're getting 320 feet a second. So the way that you factor momentum is you multiply the mass of the object times the velocity it's moving. So when you get that number, you divide that by 225,400. And the reason that you divide it by that number specifically has to do with the fact that we're talking in feet per second as a velocity versus, like the mass of the arrow itself. That's just the magic number that you divide it by. It doesn't matter what that number is. It could be 10, it could be 200, it could be 2 billion. It doesn't matter. The numbers are still going to react the same, right? The object with the more mass that is moving slower is going to have a much higher momentum. And so that arrow, that 400 grain arrow moving at 320 feet a second is 0.57 slug feet a second. It's like 0.567 something. I just round it to 0.57. My bow from that Monster Safari right there, shooting that 1076 grain arrow at 60 yards. So at launch, it's 0.98 slug feet a second. At 20 yards, it's 0.96. At 40 yards, it's 0.95. At 60 yards, it's 0.94. That 1076 grain arrow that's moving 200 feet per second at 60 yards has more momentum, which is penetration potential, than a 400 grain arrow moving 320 feet per second at launch from that same bow right there. Momentum, and we'd seen that on the lab radar, between launch and 60 yards, it only lost like 6-7 feet per second. Go do that with a 400 grain arrow, you're going to lose like 25-ish feet per second. It's just simple physics, guys. That's all it is. Animals have a much higher density to them than our atmosphere around us. It's able to slow down the arrow a lot quicker. So another analogy that would work really, really well is, say you're walking down the side of the road and you see a motorcycle and they're doing 200 miles an hour and they're coming right for you. The only thing that you have to hide behind is like a small brick building, like nothing massive, nothing big, like a little outhouse or something, right? 4x4 brick building. You jump behind that motorcycle plows into it, okay? Now imagine a semi-truck where the driver fell asleep behind the wheel, moving 60 miles an hour, and you have that same building to hide behind. Which one of those two scenarios would you prefer? Now, obviously, nobody prefers either. But in that circumstance, the semi-truck is moving a lot slower, but it has a lot more mass, therefore able to knock down those brick walls a lot easier and potentially harm you. Hunting is the same thing. That brick wall is the rib cage of the animal. You represent the heart of the animal, and the crotch rocket and the semi-truck, those are the arrows that we're using to be able to harvest these wild animals. And obviously, those are extreme analogies, right? But the concept is the same. Momentum is a big, big, big thing that you should be concerned about in bow hunting. That's basically going to be all that I really have to say. I have to put this into that video. We're going to finish working up that video. I'm going to get this presented to you guys. This is obviously, I'm filming this right now after the hunt. I've already killed the water buffalo. If you haven't seen that, I'll tag it for right here. Fantastic video. Learned a lot. I'm going to be bringing that to you guys, but I want to get this wrapped up. So anyway, thank you very much. Stay tuned. All right, so it's been a minute. I leave as of today, a week from today. So finally getting the finishing touches of these things going. I was out there doing my broadhead tuning on these. Just as like with my 11 factor arrow build, and I'll tag it right there. When you spine your arrows perfectly to your bow, okay? So shooting them like a recurve, like there on the wall, okay? Start at a full-length carbon, knowing the point weight that you want to shoot. And as long as you batch your spines appropriately, like we did at the beginning of this video, right? As you're kind of slowly trimming the carbon away and you're shooting these things, you'll find that spot where you get perfect arrow flight. So these broadheads, okay, they're like 3 inches long and like an inch wide. They may even be longer. Let me see here. I know they have the 3-to-1 cut ratio. I'm pretty sure these are about the same size as the others. So yeah, they're 3 1/4 inches long. Trying to think of how I can show you that. There we go. So 3 1/4 inches long. Okay, right there, an inch wide. Yeah. So basically, that's a lot of surface area that's on these things, and everybody thinks that like these fixed blade broadheads, they don't fly great. There's not very many broadheads that have more surface area than these guys right here. I'm here to tell you, I just got done broadhead tuning. They all group perfectly with each other and with my field points, and that's because I took the time to batch my carbon and walk down the length of the spine until I get perfect arrow flight with a field point as a bear shaft, and then we just fletched them up from there. So we put a wrap on here, lighted knock, right? And so the last step, because structural integrity is #1 on the list for a reason, okay? It has to be there. These are large animals that I'm planning on shooting with this arrow. Total arrow weight is going to be around like 1,080 grains. I will weigh it out, and I'll also put the weight right here on the screen, the final arrow weight. But these are big animals with big heavy bones. You have hard impacts and bad things happen. So we want to make sure that these are solid and good to go. So you'll see here, I put a bunch of JB weld on the screw and shaft of this, and I've already kind of screwed it in here and taken it back out. And I remembered I needed to show you guys, right? But we're just going to go ahead and thread this in here. I'm going to tighten her down, and we're going to let this cure up and do its thing, because we don't want any part of this arrow to fail or come apart on us, because the second that it fails, you're now no longer a 1080, 77, 1080-ish grain arrow anymore. You're now fragments of much smaller mass, and instantly your penetration is killed. So we want to make sure that these are going to stay solid and do their job, because that's why we're going through all the effort to make sure that we're doing them. So here we are. That's a little insignia I put on there to make sure that if I ever take the broadheads off, that I'm matching them with the arrow that they go with, because these were all weighed. So there's the arrow. We'll go ahead and weigh these guys out. I will get you a total arrow weight, final arrow weight as it sits. Get with you when we go to sharpen and strap these guys and make sure they're hunt ready. I have a week to go today. Got a lot to do. I got to get all my packing and stuff done. Build a foam liner for this bow case that I'm using. It's a Pelican 1745 Air bow case, so comes with like TSA locks on it. I have one that I use to fly with my VXR, which I'm also bringing. I have to bring 2 bows, because this arrow is specifically with this bow, specifically for the water buffalo, the red stag, or the fallow deer that I'll shoot with my VXR, along with all the hogs, because I have a lot of hunting arrows for that bow. So anyway, stay tuned. Hopefully I'll bring you guys some good footage. Thanks for tuning in. Talk later. All right, so got the arrows finished up. Spoiler alert, I've already weighed them and wrote the weights down right here on the bottom, but I'll show you guys on camera. So arrow 1, you already saw it's going to be 1075.8 grains. Okay, get that off there. I'm trying to do this one-handed basically. Arrow number 2. Oh, this one's not on there right. I wonder why it's different all of a sudden. This scale I don't think is the best. If I can get it to balance right. There we go. Okay, 1075.2. That's weird. That was when I weighed it before, so here's the weight on the bottom. 1075.8. Wonder what's going on here. Hold on, let me tear this. Now we get 1075.6. Oh well. We'll go with it. $107.56. This one I think was half a grain heavier. This one I think was 1076.3. Yep, now it says 1076.1. So still half a grain heavier. Balance. And 1076.1. So there you have it, from 1075.8 grains to 1076.3. It's half a grain's worth of variance between my heaviest and my lightest arrows, which is pretty good for arrows that are almost 1100 grains. It's not abnormal to find, especially when you get into heavier components, you'll find like variances of like 3 or 4 grains, sometimes even more, because there's a lot of material to occupy those components. So to have this completely fully built, ready to go, have half a grain of variance between them, really kind of a good thing. So let's put one of these through a water buffalo. Anyway, thanks for watching.